on the Meetup site. So if you search maybe Caddy or Belton and coop plans, there are some coop plans listed there for sure that I know are free. I do want to go back to the poop board kind of question. The wonderful thing about coop design is you kind of have your elements that you have to consider, these great points that Josh has brought up, but then how you design it and actually implement it, there's all kinds of options as long as you cover those basics. And one thing I noticed that I thought was very smart when we were at Carol Lamb's last month for Boggy Creek Farm is she had kind of the roosting area enclosed with hardware cloth. Actually, my husband noticed it, but hardware cloth sticking out over empty ground. So it was kind of like a hangout outside of the coop, and that was smart because then it just dropped through. They didn't get dirty. It wasn't in the coop. They couldn't use it again. So another idea to throw around.
I didn't see the coop, but I think what she's talking about is where the roosting area is. It opens up sort of in this shape, and then the roosts are up above it, so that the manure can fall through the hardware cloth, and then you can readily rake it, and from the outside, and it's not actually inside the coop.
So the coop design might be like this, with this part being the roost, part is enclosed, this part where it falls under is not part of the coop. That's smart.
Yeah, and on our, just as a side note, on our stationary coops, we build ours elevated for the same reason. They're 24 inches off the ground, and they do have the wire floor, and then for the same purpose, the manure can fall through, and you can readily rake out from underneath rather than having to go inside and clean out the coop. There's been questions about that. I have not experienced any issues with them on the half-inch mesh wire. Anything bigger, I would say possibly so. Anything smaller that they could actually get their toes stuck in, like a 1/4 inch hardware cloth, I would think so as well. Plus, 1/4 inch hardware cloth, the droppings, especially in the wintertime when they're thick, are not going to fall through anything. It's going to be something you're going to have to regularly wash out.
Depending on if it's a mobile coop you're building or if it's stationary. On my stationary one, my chickens get to go out and go on pasture in the daytime and then come back in their coop at night. So my stationary coop, I kind of did a blend where I have we have some paneling, more cattle paneling along maybe 2 feet, maybe 18 inches, 2 feet out on the outside and a foot under, so it's just along, or 6 inches under, so it's in the coop still where they can scratch and stuff, but to keep the predators from digging, we went out a good bit just to keep it there. So there's kind of a blend there of not having it fully enclosed, but having a little bit to keep predators from going through.
And on that same note, you can take that hardware cloth and bend it at a 45, attach it to the side of your coop, staple it, and then stake it to the ground. When you do it to the ground, I'd come out at least a foot. And what that does is if you have anything that actually comes up and they're trying to dig into the coop, they're not going to be able to dig down through that wire. Welded wire would probably last longer. It's generally going to be a bigger mesh, but it's still fairly easy to work with. And as far as attaching it to the coop, it only needs to come up 3 to 4 inches just where you can get it solidly attached to the coop. But that will keep anything, rather than having to put a wire floor in underneath the entire coop. That's a very good alternative. Anything that digs, like I said, they're going to hit that wire. If they're smart enough to come out a foot, 1.5 feet to start digging, they got a long way to go before they're ever going to dig inside the coop. You're going to know something's trying to dig in before you have a problem there.
For nesting material, could you use a shredded paper?
You can. Again, it's not going to fluff and make a nest. It's even if you fluff it, by the time they're on it and whatnot, they're going to mat it down. And if they do, if they do poop in there, it gets messier than hay does. He was asking about using paper in the nest boxes, like shredded paper. And yes, that does work, but it can mat down and be nastier than using hay or shavings or something. Ideally, you want something that's somewhat absorbent because inevitably they're going to poop in the nest boxes regardless of all the steps you take to try to keep them from doing so. And so anything that's at least somewhat absorbent that can at least pull the moisture out of that area is beneficial to them health-wise. The only downside with multiple birds is if they like to make a nest, and I mean they will literally get in there and kick and try to nest that area out. And if another bird's already laid eggs, they can kick it and just bury it, kind of like they would with the shavings. And it's not really an issue, but you'll have the main thing is more convenience for you and having to dig through those shavings to see if there's any eggs that are buried in any other part of the nest box.
What kind of flooring do you have in the stationary coop? How often do you have to clean it out? Do you have to use it to disinfect?
She was asking about flooring in stationary coops. Our flooring, we use the 1/2-inch hardware cloth. Again, I think overall it's probably the best wire to use in any kind of flooring or anything. It's large enough that they're not likely to get their toes caught, yet it's small enough that it supports their body weight there. As far as disinfecting a coop, bleach is probably the easiest, most effective thing to use as far as disinfecting. Unless you've had an outbreak or disease problem with the chickens, I don't really think it's necessary. It's certainly not going to hurt anything if, periodically you want to disinfect the coop. The recommendations vary a lot on that. We use 2x2 in the coops that we build, and we just round over the tops. And that seems to work plenty well for the chicken. 2x2 is generally a good size. Some people think they need more, some people think they need less, but I haven't had any problems with using 2x2 boards as the roosting bars. If you've got branches that are about 2 inches thick, just want to pick up branches, that works just as well. What she's asking is about disinfecting any branches or things that you find out in the open that you end up using in the coop. It wouldn't be a bad idea. Again, they don't have a very strong immune system, so I mean, if there is something that happens to be in the wood that disease-wise they could pick up, then yeah, it could potentially be an issue. Yeah, I don't. I mean, but yeah, it wouldn't hurt anything to do so for sure. Again, a lot of those kind of things are kind of if you want to. With migratory birds coming through, they can bring in different diseases and things. So, it could be from migratory bird diseases. It could be from something in the ground, something they ate. I mean, it's hard to tell a lot of times where they pick something up from. But I know this fall I had a lot of people that had issue with fowl pox, and a lot of it was with the cold, damp conditions and the mosquitoes carry with it. And so I know a lot of people had issues this fall with the fowl pox. But again, it just varies from season to season what kind of diseases and things are out there.
Another material you do not want to use in your chicken coop where the chickens can get to it is styrofoam. They love to eat styrofoam, but it's not digestible. So if you're going to do any insulation, make sure that there's a barrier so that the birds cannot get to it.
She's asking about weeds.
Don't spray anything on them.
Yeah.